On her wedding night, a woman walked into the room expecting everything to be just a step into the life ahead. But her husband, a millionaire with a quiet kind of power, looked at her with a mysterious smile and said, "I'm going to teach you how to be a woman." Yet she soon realized he had no idea of the power she could hold over him. If this story hooked you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. The summer breeze drifted through the open windows of St. Catherine's Church in Newport, Rhode Island, carrying with it the scent of salt and money. Audrey Bennett stood motionless before the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. The custom Vera Wang wedding gown hugged her slender frame, layers of ivory silk and lace cascading to the floor like a waterfall frozen in time. 5 minutes, Miss Bennett, the wedding coordinator chirped, poking her head through the door before disappearing again. Audrey nodded, the simple movement causing her pearl earrings, her mother's, to sway gently against her neck. In 5 minutes, she would walk down the aisle and become Mrs. Audrey Pierce, wife to one of the most powerful men in American finance. She hadn't planned this. Not exactly. Growing up in the upper echelons of Newport society meant certain expectations: college at an Ivy League school, involvement in the right charitable organizations, and eventually marriage to someone from a suitable family. Her parents had guided her through each step with unwavering certainty. When she'd met Jackson Pierce at a charity gala in Manhattan 9 months ago, she'd recognized the gleam in her mother's eye immediately. Jackson was 38 to her, 25, established in ways most men her age couldn't dream of being. The Pierce name adorned buildings in financial districts across the country, and Jackson himself had doubled the family fortune through shrewd investments and acquisitions that frequently made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Their courtship had been swift, public, and, Audrey had to admit, calculated. Jackson was always the perfect gentleman, attentive and generous, but there was something in his gaze that made her breath catch in her throat. Not love, not exactly. Something more like assessment, as if he were constantly calculating her value. "It's time, darling." Her father appeared at the door, distinguished in his tailored tuxedo, his silver hair swept back perfectly. Charles Bennett extended his arm to his only daughter, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "You look beautiful." Audrey linked her arm through his, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Thank you, Daddy." As they positioned themselves at the end of the aisle, the string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon. The 300 guests rose, turning to watch her entrance. At the altar stood Jackson Pierce, statuesque in his Tom Ford tuxedo, dark hair expertly styled, his gaze fixed solely on her. His face was a mask of proud satisfaction. Each step brought her closer to him, closer to the life she'd been groomed for. When her father placed her hand in Jackson's, she felt the strength in his grip, possessive and assured. "You're exquisite," he whispered, just for her ears. The ceremony passed in a blur of traditional vows and practiced smiles. Before she knew it, they were being announced as Mr. and Mrs. Pierce, and Jackson was kissing her with a restraint that seemed to promise something else entirely for later. The reception at the Ocean Cliff Mansion, overlooking the Atlantic, was a showcase of wealth and influence. Politicians mingled with celebrities. Business magnates exchanged pleasantries with old money families. Audrey moved through it all like a well-trained performer, saying all the right things, laughing at all the right moments, her hand never leaving the crook of Jackson's arm. "You're a natural," he murmured, as they shared their first dance. "Everyone is enchanted." "Is that what you wanted?" she asked, unable to mask the genuine curiosity in her voice. His eyes, a deep, penetrating blue, narrowed slightly. "I always get what I want, Audrey, and what I want is for you to be the perfect Mrs. Pierce." The words sent a chill down her spine despite the warmth of the summer evening. As midnight approached, they bid farewell to their guests and were whisked away in Jackson's Bentley to his Newport mansion, now their home. The sprawling estate sat on 10 acres overlooking the ocean, a monument to old money tastefully updated with modern luxuries. Jackson carried her over the threshold, a traditional gesture that felt strangely proprietary coming from him. Inside, the staff had prepared the house for their return, champagne chilling, soft lighting, rose petals leading up the grand staircase. "Your parents raised you well," Jackson said as he poured 2 glasses of Dom Perignon. Elegant, educated, discreet, but there's so much more to being my wife than what they could teach you. Audrey accepted the champagne, her fingers brushing against his. What do you mean? Jackson took a sip, watching her over the rim of his glass. You've been prepared to be a society wife, Audrey. I need a partner who understands power, how to wield it, how to serve it. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm not naive, Jackson. No, he set down his glass and moved. Toward her, his movements controlled and deliberate. You've been sheltered your entire life, protected. There's a whole world beyond the one you know, Audrey. I want to show it to you. When he reached her, he gently took the champagne from her hand and set it aside. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, tilting her face up to his. Do you know why I chose you? The question hung between them, loaded with unspoken expectations. Audrey swallowed, finding her voice. Because I fit the profile of what you needed in a wife. A smile curved his lips, not quite reaching his eyes. Partly, but also because I saw something in you, something untapped, something waiting to be awakened. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. You have no idea of your own potential, do you? Before she could respond, he took her hand and led her up the grand staircase toward the master suite. Each step felt significant, as if she were crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. The master bedroom was a testament to masculine elegance, rich mahogany furniture, muted blues and greys, floor-to-ceiling windows that would frame the Atlantic at dawn. Jackson closed the door behind them, the soft click echoing in the spacious room. Audrey stood in the center, suddenly very aware of her wedding dress, of the expectations of this night. She'd been raised to understand her duty as a wife, but standing here now facing Jackson's penetrating gaze, she felt woefully unprepared. He circled her slowly, deliberately, like a connoisseur appraising a rare work of art. Turn around, he commanded softly. She complied, feeling his fingers on the row of tiny buttons running down her spine. One by one he unfastened them, his touch clinical rather than passionate. When the dress loosened, he helped her step out, Fauvet carefully hanging it in the waiting garment bag. Standing in her silk slip and lace garter belt, Audrey fought the urge to cover herself. Jackson's gaze was appreciative but calculating, as if he were cataloguing every detail of her appearance. You're trembling, he observed. I'm nervous, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He approached her again, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. There's no need to be. This is just the beginning, Audrey, the beginning of your education. My education? The words came out breathy, uncertain. Jackson's smile was enigmatic, his eyes holding a promise that was both thrilling and terrifying. Yes, tonight I'm going to start teaching you what it means to be a woman, my woman. The weight of his words pressed against her chest, making it difficult to breathe. This wasn't simply about physical intimacy. It was about something deeper, more fundamental. He wanted to remake her in some way, to mold her into his vision of the perfect wife. As he guided her toward the bed, Audrey realized that everything in her life, her education, her social training, her parents' expectations, had been leading to this moment. She had been prepared to be someone's wife, to fulfill the role society had designated for her. But Jackson wanted more than that. He wanted transformation. With gentle but firm hands, he positioned her on the edge of the bed, standing over her with an expression of controlled anticipation. Do you trust me, Audrey? She looked up at the man she had married just hours ago, this powerful, enigmatic figure who now held her future in his hands. Did she trust him? She barely knew him. And yet, here she was, bound to him by law and tradition. I want to, she answered honestly. Something flickered in his eyes, approval perhaps, or challenge. He leaned down, his lips brushing against her ear. Good, because by the time I'm finished with you, you'll be more than you ever imagined possible. In that moment, as his words settled over her like a veil, Audrey realized that her wedding night was not simply a ritual or a formality. It was the first move in a game she didn't fully understand, a game where the stakes were nothing less than her identity itself. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden streaks across the Egyptian cotton sheets. Audrey blinked awake, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night flooded back, the wedding, the reception, and her first night as Mrs. Jackson Pierce. She turned to find Jackson's side of the bed, empty, the sheets cool to her touch. A note sat on his pillow, written in his precise handwriting, "Breakfast on the terrace at 9. Wear something from the closet. J." Audrey glanced at the bedside clock, 8:15. She slipped from beneath the covers, wrapping herself in a silk robe she found laid out for her. Her body felt different somehow, as if something fundamental had shifted inside her. Last night, Jackson had been both gentle and commanding, leading her through an experience that was as much about psychological surrender as physical intimacy. She padded across the plush carpet to the massive walk-in closet that adjoined the master bath. Pushing open the double doors, she froze. The closet was filled with women's clothing, not just a few items, but an entire wardrobe. Designer dresses, tailored slacks, cashmere sweaters, all organized by color and style. Each piece looked to be exactly her size. "Do you like it?" Audrey startled, turning to find Jackson leaning against the doorframe. He was already dressed in crisp linen pants and a light blue button-down, looking refreshed and composed. You bought all of this for me?" she asked, running her fingers over a row of silk blouses. "Of course." He stepped into the closet, surveying the collection with satisfaction. "Your previous wardrobe was lovely, but it reflected your parents' vision for you. This," he gestured to the carefully curated clothing, "reflects mine." Audrey felt a flutter of unease. "And what about my vision for myself?" Jackson's expression softened, though his eyes remained sharp. "That's what I'm trying to help you discover, Audrey. You've spent your whole life following a script written by others. I want to show you possibilities you've never considered." He moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. In the mirrored wall before them, their reflection told a story of contrast and complementarity, his dark, controlled presence against her fair vulnerability. "For breakfast today," he murmured, "the pale blue Chanel dress with the cream cardigan." His fingers skimmed down her arm, leaving goosebumps in their wake. "I have meetings in Providence this afternoon, but I'll be back for dinner. We have reservations at Maria at 8. With that, he pressed a brief kiss to her temple and left, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Audrey stood motionless, staring at her reflection. Her mother had always selected her clothing, and then her college roommates had influenced her style. Now Jackson was stepping into that role, but with an authority that felt both intrusive and strangely comforting. She found the blue Chanel dress and slipped it on. The fit was perfect, as if it had been made for her body. Completing the outfit, with the suggested cardigan and a pair of pearl earrings she found in a velvet-lined drawer, she made her way downstairs. The Newport mansion was even more impressive by daylight. Tasteful antiques mingled with modern art pieces, floor-to-ceiling windows framed breathtaking ocean views, and fresh flowers adorned every room. A staff member directed her to the terrace where Jackson sat reading the Wall Street Journal, a spread of breakfast foods arranged on the table before him. "Right on time," he said approvingly, folding his newspaper as she approached. "You look perfect." "Thank you." Audrey took the seat across from him, accepting the cup of coffee he poured for her. "Did you select everything in that closet yourself?" Jackson added a precise amount of cream to his own coffee. "I have a personal shopper who handles the details, but yes, I approved every piece. Your appearance is important, Audrey, not just for social occasions, but for our daily life. It's a reflection of who we are together." "And who are we together?" she asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. His gaze met hers, unflinching. "We're a partnership of complementary strengths. I provide the framework. You bring it to life with grace and intelligence." "That sounds rehearsed." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "Does it? Perhaps because I've given it considerable thought. Our marriage isn't some romantic whim, Audrey. It's a calculated alliance designed to benefit us both." "How does it benefit me?" The question emerged more boldly than she'd intended. Jackson leaned forward, his focus intensifying. I'm offering you a life of unlimited possibility. Financial security, social position, intellectual stimulation. But more than that, I'm offering you freedom from the narrow expectations that have defined your existence until now, by replacing them with your expectations. His laugh was genuine, surprising her. You're not as passive as you pretend to be, are you? Good. I didn't marry you to acquire a doll, Audrey. I chose you because beneath that polished exterior, I sensed a woman of substance, someone worthy of the life I can provide. Audrey looked out over the manicured gardens to the ocean beyond, considering his words. Last night you said you were going to teach me to be a woman. Your woman, what did you mean? Jackson's expression grew serious. Society has taught you to be pleasant, accommodating, decorative. I want to show you how to be powerful, how to recognize your worth and use it deliberately, how to move through the world not as an accessory but as a force. And that benefits you how? She pressed. Because I need a partner, not a subordinate. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The world I inhabit is complex and often ruthless. Having a wife who understands that world, who can navigate it skillfully, makes us both stronger. The intensity in his eyes was mesmerizing. For the first time, Audrey glimpsed the man behind the controlled exterior, passionate, driven, perhaps even visionary in his way. What if I disappoint you? The question emerged from a place of genuine vulnerability. Jackson's thumb traced circles on her wrist, his touch both possessive and reassuring. You won't. I've watched you, studied you. You have an innate adaptability, a quiet resilience. You just need someone to push you beyond the boundaries you've accepted. After breakfast, Jackson gave her a proper tour of the estate. The 12-bedroom mansion had been in the Pierce family for 3 generations, though Jackson had extensively renovated it to suit his tastes. Besides the main house, the property boasted a guest cottage, a pool house, tennis courts, and a private dock where his yacht was moored. I want you to treat this as your home, not mine, he told her as they walked through the rose garden. Make whatever changes you feel are necessary. The staff answers to you as much as to me. That's generous, Audrey replied, still trying to reconcile the controlling aspects of his personality with these gestures of inclusion. It's practical. We're partners now. He checked his watch. I need to leave for my meetings. Caroline, the head housekeeper, will help you with anything you need today. I've also left a portfolio in my study that outlines our financial situation. I'd like you to review it before we discuss your involvement in managing our assets. Audrey blinked in surprise. You want me involved in your finances? Our finances, he corrected. And yes, I told you, Audrey, I don't want a trophy wife. I want a partner who understands every aspect of our life together. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. I want you to grow into your power. After he left, Audrey spent the morning exploring her new home, trying to make sense of her new reality. The staff, a team of 12 who managed the house, grounds, and kitchen, treated her with a deference that felt foreign and uncomfortable. In Jackson's study, she found the portfolio he'd mentioned, a comprehensive overview of their combined wealth. The numbers made her head spin. Jackson's net worth was well into the billions, far more than even the society gossip had suggested. Her own modest trust fund, which had once seemed substantial, was barely a footnote in their combined assets. What struck her most, however, wasn't the wealth itself, but the way it was organized. Jackson had already transferred significant assets into her name, giving her direct control over investment accounts, real estate holdings, and philanthropic endowments. A note attached to the portfolio read, "Power without economic autonomy is merely illusion. These resources are yours to direct as you see fit, though I'm happy to advise. J." Audrey sat back in the leather chair, mind reeling. Jackson was simultaneously controlling every aspect of her personal life, her clothing, her schedule, her social appearance, while handing her financial authority that her own father would never have considered appropriate for a woman. She spent the afternoon studying the portfolio, making notes and researching companies in which they held significant stakes. By the time she dressed for dinner, selecting a simple black Dior dress rather than whatever Jackson might have recommended, she had begun to formulate questions about their investment strategy. The restaurant was exclusive and intimate, tucked away in a historic building in downtown Newport. Jackson was already seated when she arrived, rising as the maitre d' led her to their table. "You changed your hair," he observed, noting the elegant updo she'd chosen instead of her usual loose waves. "Does that bother you?" she asked, settling into her chair. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Not at all, it suits you, as does the dress. An excellent choice." He ordered wine without consulting her, but when the sommelier presented the bottle, Jackson deferred to Audrey for approval. It was a small gesture, but a telling one. "I reviewed the portfolio," she said after their first course arrived. "And?" His gaze was intent, evaluating. "And I have questions about your heavy investment in sustainable energy startups. The returns are speculative at best." Jackson's expression shifted from surprise to pleasure. "Those investments aren't about immediate returns. They're positioning us for the economic realities of the next decade. But the risk profile is balanced by our more conservative holdings," he finished. "Look at the portfolio as a whole, not just the individual components." They spent the remainder of dinner engaged in a detailed discussion of investment strategy, market trends, and philanthropy. Jackson answered her questions thoroughly, challenging her assumptions and encouraging her to think more broadly. By the time they returned home, something had shifted between them. Jackson had seen a side of Audrey that perhaps even she hadn't fully recognized. Analytical, strategic, unafraid to challenge his opinions. As they prepared for bed, he watched her with newfound appreciation. "You surprised me tonight," he admitted. Audrey met his gaze in the bathroom mirror as she removed her earrings. "Is that good or bad?" "Very good." He moved behind her, his hands settling on her waist. "I told you I saw potential in you. Tonight was just the beginning." His lips found the sensitive spot below her ear, and Audrey felt herself responding, despite her lingering reservations about his controlling nature. There was something intoxicating about being truly seen, about having her intelligence valued, as much as her appearance. "Tomorrow," he murmured against her skin, "I'll show you more of what it means to claim your power, with me, through me." As his hands moved with deliberate intent, Audrey realized she was balancing on a knife's edge, drawn to the vision of herself that Jackson was offering, yet wary of losing her autonomy in the process. He was attempting to mold her, yes, but perhaps she could shape him too. Perhaps that was what partnership truly meant. 3 weeks into her marriage, Audrey found herself settled into a routine that was both predictable and disorienting. Each morning, Jackson would suggest, though it felt more like instruction, what she should wear. Each day brought some new lesson in what he called the architecture of influence, introductions to key business associates, guidance on social dynamics among Newport's elite, tutorials on the intricacies of the Pierce family's business empire. It was exhausting, exhilarating, suffocating. "You're not concentrating," Jackson observed, his voice cutting through her thoughts. They sat in his home office, reviewing proposals for a new technological investment. "I'm sorry," Audrey said, straightening in her chair. "There's a lot to absorb." Jackson set down his tablet, studying her with that penetrating gaze that still made her pulse quicken. "You're not overwhelmed by the material. You're distracted by something else. What is it?" This was the paradox of Jackson. He could be domineering and controlling, yet also perceptive and attentive to her emotional state in ways that few others had ever been. "I feel like I'm losing myself," she admitted, the words escaping before she could reconsider. "Them. Everything I do, everything I wear, everyone I speak to, it all passes through your filter first." Rather than showing anger, Jackson leaned back, a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. "Good." "Good?" Audrey repeated, incredulous. "Yes, good. You're finally voicing your frustration instead of just accommodating me." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the Atlantic. "Do you think I haven't noticed your small rebellions? The book selections that deliberately challenge my political views, the conversations with my more progressive business associates, the subtle changes to the outfits I suggest." Heat rose to Audrey's cheeks. She had indeed been making these small gestures of independence, testing the boundaries of his control. Jackson turned back to her, his expression thoughtful. "I didn't marry you to create a puppet, Audrey. If that's what I wanted, I could have found someone far more pliable. I chose you because I saw a woman with her own mind, her own will, qualities that had been suppressed by a lifetime of social conditioning. So this has all been, what? Some kind of test? Anger flared inside her, white-hot and clarifying. Not a test, an awakening. He moved toward her, his movements deliberate as always. Every constraint I've placed on you has been designed to provoke exactly this response. This moment when you finally stand up for yourself. Audrey rose from her chair, needing to be on equal footing. You've been manipulating me from the beginning. I prefer to think of it as challenging you. His voice was calm, reasonable, which only fueled her indignation. The women in your social circle are ornaments, Audrey. Beautifully crafted, utterly dependent on the men who possess them. I wanted more from my wife. So you're molding me into your ideal partner through psychological games. She shook her head, disgusted. That's not love, Jackson, that's control. Is it? He raised an eyebrow. Or is it liberation? Before our marriage, you were sleepwalking through a life designed by your parents. Now you're awake, angry, passionate, real. There was truth in his words, and that was perhaps what disturbed her most. Since their wedding, she had felt more alive, more engaged with the world around her than ever before. Jackson's challenges had forced her to develop strengths she hadn't known she possessed. You don't get to decide how I should grow or change, she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. That's my choice. His smile was slow, approving. Now you're beginning to understand what I've been trying to show you. Power isn't given, Audrey. It's claimed. Before she could respond, his phone chimed with the distinct tone he used for urgent business matters. Jackson checked the screen, his expression shifting to one of focused attention. We'll continue this discussion later, he said, already typing a response. I need to handle this situation. He looked up at her, the intensity in his gaze undiminished. In the meantime, I have a proposal for you, an opportunity to exercise some of that independence you're finding. Despite her lingering anger, Audrey found herself curious. What kind of opportunity? The Pierce Foundation is hosting a gala next month for educational initiatives. Traditionally, I oversee these events, but I'd like you to take the lead this time. Complete autonomy, budget, guest list, program, everything. Audrey blinked in surprise. The Pierce Foundation was Jackson's most visible philanthropic vehicle, responsible for millions in charitable giving annually. Putting her in charge of their signature event was no small gesture. Why? She asked, suspicious of his motives. Because you have vision, Audrey, and because it's time you stepped out of the shadows, not as Mrs. Jackson Pierce, but as Audrey Pierce in your own right. He gathered his papers, already shifting mental gears toward his business crisis. Think about it, we'll discuss details tonight. After he left, Audrey remained in the office, thoughts churning. Was this just another form of manipulation? A way to channel her newfound assertiveness into something that ultimately served his interests? Or was it a genuine opportunity to carve out territory that was truly her own? Either way, she realized, she wanted to do it. The challenge excited her, offering a chance to prove something to Jackson, yes, but more importantly to herself. She spent the afternoon in the estate's library, researching previous Pierce Foundation events and drafting preliminary ideas for the gala. By the time evening approached, she had filled a notebook with concepts, potential themes, and innovative approaches to fundraising. When Jackson hadn't returned by 8, she ate dinner alone on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. The solitude was refreshing after weeks of Jackson's constant guidance and evaluation. It was past midnight when he finally returned, finding her curled up in the living room with a glass of wine and a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman who had redefined the role of political wife through her own activism and independence. "Are you still up?" he observed, loosening his tie as he entered. "I wanted to talk about the gala," Audrey replied, setting aside her book. "I have ideas." Jackson's expression softened with what appeared to be genuine admiration. "Of course you do." He poured himself a scotch and sat opposite her. "Tell me." For the next hour, Audrey outlined her vision, a departure from the traditional stuffy fundraising dinners the foundation typically hosted. Instead, she proposed an interactive experience that would showcase the educational initiatives they funded, allowing donors to engage directly with the students, teachers, and technologies benefiting from their support. It's more authentic, she explained, and it creates emotional investment, not just financial. Jackson listened attentively, asking occasional questions, but largely allowing her to present her full concept without interruption. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "It's brilliant," he said finally. "Innovative, meaningful, aligned with our mission, but expressed in a way that's distinctly yours." He set down his glass, leaning forward. "I want you to implement it exactly as you've described. Whatever resources you need are at your disposal." Relief and pride flooded through Audrey. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he countered. "This is your achievement, not mine, and it's just the beginning of what you're capable of." His confidence in her was intoxicating, but Audrey hadn't forgotten their earlier confrontation. "Jackson, about what I said this afternoon, you were right." The simple admission stunned her into silence. Jackson Pierce was not a man accustomed to acknowledging others' correctness. "I have been controlling, manipulative even, but not for the reasons you think." "Then explain it to me," she challenged. "Help me understand why you feel the need to orchestrate every aspect of my development." Jackson stood, moving to the window that overlooked the moonlit ocean. When he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability she'd never heard before. "My father was a titan, ruthless, brilliant, utterly dominant in business and at home. My mother was everything society expected of a corporate wife. Beautiful, charming, completely subservient to his will." He turned back to her, shadows playing across his features. "She was miserable, Audrey, trapped in a gilded cage of his making. And he was equally unhappy, though he would never admit it. Their marriage was a perfect social performance and a complete emotional failure." Audrey remained silent, sensing he needed to continue without interruption. "I swore I would never repeat their mistake," he went on. "I didn't want a wife who would simply bend to my will, who would slowly wither away beneath the weight of my expectations." His gaze met hers, intense and sincere. "I wanted an equal, someone strong enough to stand beside me, not behind me. But the women I met in our circles were trained from birth to be exactly what my mother was, decorative, accommodating, ultimately hollow." "So you decided to—" "What? Create your own equal?" Audrey asked, still struggling to reconcile his controlling behavior with this professed desire for partnership. "Not create, reveal." He moved toward her, kneeling before her chair so their eyes were level. "Everything I saw in you during our courtship told me you had the potential to be extraordinary, Audrey. Intelligence, intuition, inner strength. But you had been taught to hide those qualities, to make yourself smaller and more palatable to society's expectations." His hands found hers warm and steady. "My methods were heavy-handed, I admit, but I needed to provoke you into recognizing your own power, to push you until you pushed back." Audrey studied his face, searching for deception and finding only earnest intensity. "That doesn't justify treating me like some social experiment." "No, it doesn't," he agreed, surprising her again. "I crossed lines I shouldn't have. But I did it because I believe in you more than you believe in yourself." The rawness in his voice was compelling, but Audrey wasn't ready to surrender her righteous anger. "If you want an equal, Jackson, you need to treat me like one. That means respecting my autonomy, not testing it." "You're right," he released, her hands sitting back on his heels. "From now on, no more suggestions about your clothing, your schedule, your social engagements. Those choices are yours alone." Audrey narrowed her eyes, suspicious of this sudden capitulation. "Just like that?" "Just like that." A smile touched his lips. "Though I reserve the right to appreciate you whatever you choose." Despite herself, Audrey felt an answering smile form. This was a side of Jackson she'd only glimpsed before, vulnerable, self-aware, capable of admitting error. It complicated her image of him as a controlling mastermind. "The gala is still mine to design?" she asked. "Completely." He rose smoothly to his feet. "In fact, I'd like to expand your role beyond that single event." The Pierce Foundation needs leadership that brings fresh perspective. If you're interested, I'd like you to consider taking on a more formal position, perhaps as co-chair of the board. The offer was unexpected and significant. The foundation controlled hundreds of millions in charitable assets and wielded considerable influence in philanthropic circles. "You'd trust me with that level of responsibility?" she asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. Jackson's expression grew serious. "Audrey, I trust you with everything I have. My fortune, my reputation, my legacy, they're all in your hands already. They have been since the day we married." The simple declaration hung in the air between them, profound in its implications. For all his controlling behavior, Jackson had indeed given her access to every aspect of his life, financial, social, professional. He had opened doors that would have remained closed to her otherwise, pushing her to walk through them on her own strength. "I need time," she said finally. "Just to think about the foundation position, to process everything you've told me tonight. Take all the time you need." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected tenderness. "Just know that everything I've done, even the things that frustrated or angered you, has been in service of helping you discover your own strength." Audrey caught his hand, holding it against her cheek for a moment. "I'm not a project to be completed, Jackson. I'm a person with my own dreams and ambitions." "I know," he said softly. "That's precisely why I chose you." The days that followed marked a subtle but significant shift in their relationship. True to his word, Jackson stopped dictating her wardrobe choices and social calendar. Instead, he watched with evident fascination as Audrey began making more assertive decisions, not just about clothing and social engagements, but about their shared businesses and philanthropic endeavors. She threw herself into planning the gala, assembling a team of event coordinators who were initially skeptical of her vision but soon became enthusiastic collaborators. She visited the educational programs funded by the Pierce Foundation, speaking directly with teachers and students to understand their needs and aspirations. Jackson observed her transformation with a mixture of pride and what appeared to be genuine awe. One evening, after she had spent hours on conference calls with potential donors, he found her in the library, surrounded by notes and planning documents. "You're thriving," he remarked, leaning against the doorframe. Audrey looked up, a smile curving her lips. "I am, aren't I? It feels right, like I've found something I was meant to do." "The foundation work?" "Not just that." She set down her pen, considering. "Making a difference, using resources and influence purposefully. It's what I wanted from life, but didn't know how to achieve." Jackson crossed the room, perching on the edge of her desk. "I saw that hunger in you from the beginning. It's what drew me to you." "Is that why you married me?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Because you saw potential?" He was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Partly, but there was something else, something I couldn't quite define, a sense that you would challenge me in ways no one else ever had." "Challenge you?" Audrey laughed. "I spent our entire courtship agreeing with everything you said. On the surface, yes." His smile was knowing. "But I could see the questions in your eyes, the moments when you held back what you really thought. I wanted to know that woman, the one behind the polite facade." As he spoke, Audrey realized he had seen her more clearly than she had seen herself. The careful, accommodating persona she had cultivated wasn't her true self. It was a protective shell, a way of moving safely through a world that rewarded women for compliance more than authenticity. "I'm still figuring out who that woman is," she admitted. Jackson's expression softened with rare vulnerability. "So am I. And I find I'm fascinated by every new discovery." The Pierce Foundation Gala transformed the Boston Museum of Fine Arts into an interactive showcase of educational innovation. Instead of the traditional formal dinner with predictable speeches, guests moved through immersive exhibits where they engaged directly with students and educators from foundation-supported programs. Virtual reality stations demonstrated classroom, technologies being developed for underserved schools. Student artwork filled galleries normally reserved for master painters. Young scientists proudly displayed research projects conducted with Pierce Foundation grants. In the central courtyard, a diverse orchestra of scholarship recipients performed, original compositions inspired by their educational journeys. Audrey, resplendent in a midnight blue gown of her own choosing, moved through the space with confident grace, connecting donors with program directors, sharing success stories, and quietly securing commitments that would double the foundation's impact in the coming year. Jackson watched her from across the room, an unfamiliar emotion tightening his chest. Pride, certainly. The event was a masterpiece of planning and execution, but something else too, something that felt dangerously close to dependence. In just 3 months of marriage, Audrey had become essential to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Your wife has outdone herself," remarked Senator Gardner, appearing at Jackson's side with a glass of champagne. "I've been to hundreds of these fundraisers, and I've never seen one that so effectively communicates the mission. She's quite remarkable." "She is," Jackson agreed, his gaze following Audrey as she laughed with a group of teenage app developers. "More than I realized when I married her." The senator gave him a knowing look. "Careful, Pierce. You're starting to sound like a man in love, rather than a man who made a strategic alliance." The observation hit uncomfortably close to home. Jackson had indeed approached his marriage as he did his business deals, identifying the asset he wanted, negotiating favorable terms, and executing a clean acquisition. Emotions weren't supposed to be part of the equation. Yet here he was, watching Audrey with a mixture of admiration and longing that felt nothing like the calculated appreciation he'd expected to feel for his carefully chosen wife. "If you'll excuse me, Senator," Jackson said, setting down his untouched drink. "I should congratulate my wife on her success." He made his way through the crowd, accepting compliments on the event from business associates and social acquaintances. When he finally reached Audrey, she was deep in conversation with Dr. Eliza Chen, a pioneering researcher in educational neuroscience whose work the foundation had recently begun funding. "The preliminary results are fascinating," Dr. Chen was saying. "If we can demonstrate that the learning approach works consistently across different socioeconomic backgrounds, we could revolutionize how math is taught in elementary schools." "What about implementation costs?" Audrey asked, her expression thoughtful. "The foundation is committed to equity. Innovations that only wealthy districts can afford don't align with our mission." "That's where the scaling research comes in," Dr. Chen explained, clearly impressed by Audrey's grasp of the issues. "We're developing a tiered approach that could—" She broke off, noticing Jackson's arrival. "Mr. Pierce, I was just discussing our research with your brilliant wife." "Don't let me interrupt," Jackson said. "I'm learning as much from these conversations as our guests are." Dr. Chen smiled. Mrs. Pierce asked exactly the right questions about implementation and equity, issues that funders often overlook in favor of flashier research outcomes. You found yourself a partner with both vision and practical wisdom. After the doctor moved on to greet other attendees, Jackson turned to Audrey, taking in the confident set of her shoulders, the animated intelligence in her eyes. "Dr. Chen is right," he said quietly. "You've transformed this foundation in just a few months. The questions you're asking, the connections you're making, they're changing how we approach our entire philanthropic strategy." Audrey's smile was warm but measured. "Thank you. Though I suspect you're being generous, I'm still learning the landscape." "No," he insisted, guiding her toward a quieter corner of the exhibit hall. "I've run this foundation for 8 years, and in 3 months you've identified blind spots and opportunities I never saw. You have a gift for this work, Audrey." She studied his face, perhaps searching for the calculating assessment that had characterized so many of their early interactions. Finding only sincere admiration, she allowed herself a moment of unguarded pride. "It feels right," she admitted. "Using privilege and resources to create meaningful change. It's what I always wanted to do but didn't know how to begin." "The board meeting is next week," Jackson said. "I'd like to formally propose you as co-chair, with specific oversight of our educational initiatives. You've more than proven your capability." Audrey's expression turned thoughtful. "I'll accept on one condition." Jackson raised an eyebrow. intrigued by her newfound comfort with negotiation, which is that it's understood I'm not simply executing your vision. I need the freedom to pursue initiatives that might sometimes diverge from your priorities. 6. Months ago, such assertiveness would have been unthinkable. The transformation in her confidence was remarkable, and exactly what he had hoped to inspire. Yet the reality of it, the genuine independence she was claiming, stirred a complex mix of emotions. Pride, yes, but also an unfamiliar anxiety. What if her vision and his were incompatible? What if in encouraging her independence he was setting the stage for genuine conflict? Agreed, he said finally, pushing aside his reservations. Though, I hope we'll continue to collaborate and challenge each other's thinking. Her smile was radiant. That's exactly what I want. Partnership, not deference. The evening continued as a triumph, with donations exceeding projections by nearly 40%. By the time they returned to their Boston penthouse, maintained, for occasions when Newport was inconvenient, it was past midnight and both were exhilarated by the event's success. You've set a new standard for the foundation, Jackson said as they moved through the darkened apartment, city lights glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Everyone was impressed. Not just impressed, Audrey corrected, slipping off her heels with a sigh of relief. Engaged. Connected. To the mission in a way they hadn't been before. That's what matters. She moved to the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. In the reflection, Jackson could see the contemplative set of her features, a woman taking stock of herself and her accomplishments. "What are you thinking?" he asked, joining her at the window. Audrey was quiet for a moment before answering. "I'm thinking about the woman I was when we met. How different I feel now." "Different how?" She turned to face him, moonlight silvering her profile. "More substantial, as if I'm occupying my full space in the world for the first time." Her eyes met his, searching. "Is that what you wanted when you said you would teach me to be a woman, your woman?" The question hung between them, charged with all the complexity of their evolving relationship. "Yes and no," Jackson answered honestly. "I wanted to see you claim your power, your voice, but I didn't anticipate how that would change us both." "Both?" Audrey moved closer, curious. Jackson found himself struggling with unfamiliar vulnerability. He had initiated their relationship from a position of complete control, certain of what he wanted and how to achieve it. Now he felt off balance, responding to her growth in ways he hadn't planned. "You've changed me," he admitted finally. "Watching you step into your strength, seeing the impact you're making, it's forced me to reconsider my own approach to power and influence." "In what way?" He considered the question carefully. "I've always viewed power as something to be accumulated and wielded, a zero-sum game. But you use it differently, as a catalyst, a connective force. You don't just direct resources, you create possibilities that wouldn't exist otherwise." Audrey's expression softened. "Is that a criticism or a compliment?" "Neither, both." Jackson ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "It's an observation that's making me question assumptions I've held my entire life." She reached for his hand, her touch, both calming and electric. "That's what partnership should do, isn't it? Challenge us to see beyond our own limited perspective." The simple wisdom of her words struck him with unexpected force. He had married Audrey, believing he would be the one to shape and guide her. Yet here she was, reshaping his understanding of leadership, of influence, perhaps even of love. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "Far more than I anticipated when I chose you." Something flickered in her eyes, a shadow of the hurt his calculating approach had once caused her. "Is that why you married me? Because I fit the profile of what you needed in a wife?" Jackson recognized his own words from their wedding night echoed back to him. He had been so certain then, so methodical in his expectations. Now those same expectations seemed limited, almost arrogant in their presumption. "I married you because I saw something in you that resonated with something in me," he said carefully. "A potential I wanted to nurture. But I underestimated you, Audrey. I thought I was acquiring a promising investment. Instead, I found—" He trailed off, uncertain how to complete the thought. "Found what?" she pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. "A partner," he said finally. "Someone who challenges me to be better than I am. Someone whose growth and happiness have become essential to my own." The admission cost him something, a surrender of the careful control he had maintained throughout his life. Yet it felt necessary, even liberating, to acknowledge the depth of what she had come to mean to him. Audrey's expression was unreadable, her eyes searching his face as if looking for some hidden calculation behind his words. "Is this another strategy?" she asked, the question holding no accusation, only a genuine desire to understand. "Another way to shape my perception of our relationship?" Jackson shook his head, feeling strangely exposed. "No strategies. Not anymore." He took her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "You asked once if I trusted you with my empire. The truth is I've trusted you with far more than that. I've trusted you with parts of myself I've never shown anyone." The confession hung between them, raw and authentic in a way their carefully choreographed interactions had never been. For a long moment, Audrey was silent, processing his words. Then, with deliberate intent, she closed the remaining distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was different from any they had shared before. Not the calculated passion of their early encounters, but something deeper, an acknowledgement of the genuine connection that had grown between them. They separated. Her eyes held a new certainty. "I believe you," she said simply, "and I'm ready to see where this partnership leads, not as your project or your protégé, but as your equal." The week following the gala brought a flurry of activity. Media coverage celebrated the innovative approach to philanthropic engagement. Donation pledges continued to arrive, and Audrey found herself fielding calls from other foundations interested in adapting her interactive model for their own fundraising efforts. Through it all, something fundamental had shifted in her relationship with Jackson. The controlled dynamic of teacher and student had given way to a more balanced exchange of ideas and influence. They disagreed more openly, challenged each other's assumptions more directly, and in the process developed a deeper respect for each other's strengths. At the Pierce Foundation board meeting, Jackson formally proposed Audrey as co-chair with specific oversight of educational initiatives. The board approved unanimously, impressed by both the gala's success and the thoughtful strategic vision she presented for expanding their educational impact. "Mrs. Pierce brings a fresh perspective that our foundation needs," remarked Eleanor Whittington, the board's longest-serving member. "Her emphasis on direct engagement with the communities we serve represents exactly the evolution we should be pursuing." After the meeting, Jackson found Audrey in the foundation's rooftop garden, gazing out at the Boston skyline. The afternoon, sunlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, and for a moment he simply watched her, this remarkable woman who had transformed from the carefully polished society wife he had chosen into a force of nature he was still learning to understand. "Congratulations, co-chair Pierce," he said, joining her at the railing. Audrey turned, her smile reflecting genuine satisfaction. "Thank you, though I suspect Eleanor would have preferred to oust you completely and install me as sole chair." Jackson laughed, a free and genuine sound that would have surprised his business associates. "She's not wrong. Your vision for the foundation is clearer than mine has ever been." "Not clearer," Audrey corrected, "just different. You built the foundation's financial strength and reputation. I'm building on that foundation, not replacing it." Her generosity of spirit touched him. Where once he might have seen her success as competition, he now recognized it as complementary to his own achievements, each of them contributing distinct strengths to their shared endeavors. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket, "a token of my pride in your accomplishment." He withdrew a small velvet box, opening it to reveal an elegant bracelet of platinum and sapphires. Unlike the ostentatious jewelry he had given her during their courtship, pieces selected to showcase his wealth and taste, this was subtle, distinctive, chosen with her specific preferences in mind. "It's beautiful," she said, allowing him to fasten it around her wrist. "There's an inscription," he noted, turning the bracelet to reveal the words engraved inside. "Equal in strength, united in purpose." Audrey's eyes met his, recognizing the significance of the gesture. "You really mean it, don't you? The partnership, the equality, it's not just words." "It never was," Jackson admitted. "Even when my methods suggested otherwise, I always wanted an equal Audrey. I just didn't know how to create that relationship without trying to control the outcome." "And now?" He considered the question, aware that his answer mattered more than perhaps any business negotiation he had ever conducted. "Now I understand that true partnership can't be engineered or controlled. It has to be earned day by day through mutual respect and trust." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over the new bracelet. "I'm still learning what that means, but I want to learn. With you." Audrey's expression softened, the last vestiges of her wariness giving way to something warmer, more open. "So am I," she acknowledged. "We both have patterns to unlearn, expectations to reconsider." As they stood together, overlooking the city where each had found new purpose, Jackson realized that the careful plans he had made for their marriage had been simultaneously fulfilled and utterly transformed. He had wanted to awaken Audrey's potential, to shape her into a partner worthy of his ambitions. Instead, they were shaping each other, creating something neither could have envisioned alone, a relationship that strengthened rather than diminished them both, a partnership that expanded rather than constrained their individual growth. It was, he reflected, the most successful failure of his carefully ordered life, and for the first time in his adult existence, Jackson Pierce was genuinely content with the outcome he hadn't controlled. 6 months had passed since Audrey's appointment as co-chair of the Pierce Foundation. Autumn painted the Newport landscape in brilliant oranges and reds, the ocean darkening to deep sapphire as summer's warmth receded. In the library of their mansion, Audrey pored over financial projections for a new educational initiative she had developed, a nationwide mentorship program designed to connect underrepresented students with leaders in STEM fields. "These implementation costs seem high," she murmured to herself, making notes in the margins of the report. The program was ambitious, far more extensive than anything the foundation had previously undertaken, and she wanted to ensure every detail was perfect before presenting it to the board. "That's because you're insisting on competitive compensation for the mentors," Jackson observed, entering the library with 2 cups of coffee. He placed one beside her before settling into the leather chair opposite. "Most foundations would expect more volunteer hours." Audrey accepted the coffee gratefully. "And that's precisely why those programs struggle with consistency and quality. People who need to earn a living can't sustain volunteer commitments indefinitely." Jackson's smile held genuine admiration. "I agree. I'm just noting that it's a departure from standard philanthropic practice." "Standard practice isn't working," Audrey countered, gesturing to the research data spread across the table. "The mentorship gap for low-income students persists despite decades of well-intentioned programs. We need to fundamentally rethink the model." This was the new rhythm of their relationship, constant intellectual challenge, each pushing the other to refine and strengthen their ideas. The power dynamic that had characterized their early marriage had evolved into something more balanced, a genuine exchange between equals. "The board meets next week," Jackson said, studying her across the rim of his coffee cup. "Are you ready to present?" "Almost." Audrey gathered her notes, organizing them with practiced efficiency. "I want to review the implementation timeline once more. My concern is that we're being too cautious with the rollout. If the pilot demonstrates strong results, we should be prepared to scale quickly." Jackson nodded, trusting her judgment. In the month since taking leadership of the Foundation's educational initiatives, Audrey had demonstrated not only vision but pragmatic expertise that impressed even the most skeptical board members. "Whatever you recommend, I'll support," he said. "Simply." Audrey looked up, momentarily surprised by his unconditional endorsement. Though their relationship had transformed dramatically, moments like this, when Jackson deferred entirely to her judgment, still caught her off guard. "Thank you," she said. "Though I'd appreciate your critical perspective before I finalize anything. You see financial implications I sometimes miss." It was true. Their strengths were complementary, her visionary approach balanced by his pragmatic analysis, her emotional intelligence augmenting his strategic thinking. Together, they had begun reshaping not only the Pierce Foundation, but several of Jackson's business ventures as well, incorporating social impact metrics alongside profit considerations. "What time is your meeting with Senator Harrington?" Jackson asked, changing the subject. 4 o'clock, Audrey replied. "Her chief of staff thinks she'll support the education bill if we can demonstrate business community backing." Jackson checked his watch. "I'll have the car ready at 3. The traffic heading into Boston will be heavy this afternoon." "Actually," Audrey said, gathering her materials, "I scheduled the meeting here. I thought showing her the Foundation's research facility might be more persuasive than another formal office meeting." Jackson raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Smart. She's known for responding to concrete examples rather than abstract policy discussions." "Exactly," Audrey smiled. "And the student presentations we have set up should provide the emotional context the numbers alone can't convey." As she spoke, her phone chimed with an incoming message. Checking it, her expression brightened. "It's from my father. He and Mum want to visit next weekend if we're available." The mention of her parents brought a subtle shift to the atmosphere. Charles and Eleanor Bennett had been skeptical of their daughter's rapid engagement and marriage to Jackson Pierce, concerned that she was being swept into his powerful orbit without sufficient preparation. Their relationship with their son-in-law remained cordial but wary. "Of course they're welcome," Jackson said smoothly. "We haven't seen them since the Foundation Gala." Audrey studied him, noting the careful neutrality in his voice. "They've noticed the changes in me, you know. My mother commented that I seem more substantial now." "You've always been substantial," Jackson countered. "You're just more visible now, to others and to yourself." The observation was perceptive, capturing exactly what had shifted in her over the past year. She had stepped fully into her capabilities, no longer hiding her intelligence or ambition behind the polite facade expected of women in their social circle. "My father still thinks you orchestrated some kind of Pygmalion transformation," she said, a hint of amusement in her tone. "He doesn't understand that what you really did was remove the constraints that were keeping me small." Jackson's expression grew thoughtful. "Is that how you see it now?" The question was genuine, touching on the complex evolution of their relationship. When they'd first married, Audrey had resented what she perceived as his attempt to mold her into his ideal partner. Now, with the perspective of time and her own growth, she understood his intentions differently. "Not entirely," she admitted. "Your methods were controlling, sometimes manipulative, but your goal wasn't to reshape me into something I wasn't. It was to challenge me to become more fully myself." She met his gaze directly. "I needed that challenge, even if I resented the way it was delivered." Jackson set down his coffee cup, moving to kneel beside her chair. "I made mistakes," he acknowledged, taking her hand. "I approached our marriage like a business acquisition, convinced I knew exactly what I wanted and how to achieve it. But you were never a commodity, Audrey. You are a revelation." The simple admission touched her deeply. Jackson Pierce, master of the universe, accustomed to bending reality to his will, had been humbled by the very transformation he had sought to orchestrate. "We both had lessons to learn," she said softly, touching his face. "I had to find my voice. You had to learn to listen." He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'm still learning." "So am I," she smiled. "That's what makes this interesting." Later that afternoon, as Audrey guided Senator Harrington through the Foundation's research facility, Jackson observed from a distance, taking quiet pride in her ability to translate complex educational concepts into compelling policy arguments. The senator, a formidable woman with decades of political experience, was visibly impressed not just by the Foundation's work, but by Audrey's commanding grasp of both the research and its practical applications. "Your wife is quite remarkable. Mr. Pierce, Senator Harrington commented, as they watched Audrey engage with a group of scholarship students demonstrating a robotics project they had developed. The foundation has taken on new life under her leadership. She's exceeded all expectations, Jackson agreed. Including mine. The senator gave him a shrewd look. That can't have been easy for a man accustomed to being the smartest person in every room. Jackson considered the observation, acknowledging its partial truth. I've discovered something. More satisfying than being the smartest person in the room, Senator. And what's that? Being half of the smartest partnership? The answer came easily. Without the calculation that had once characterized his every interaction, the senator's expression softened slightly. Well, that's an evolution I wouldn't have predicted from the Jackson Pierce I've known for 20 years. After the senator departed with firm commitments to support the education bill, Audrey found Jackson in his study, reviewing quarterly reports from his various business holdings. That went well, she said, kicking off her heels and curling up in the leather armchair opposite his desk. The senator is on board. Her support should bring at least 3 other committee members with her. Jackson looked up from his tablet, taking in her satisfied expression. You were masterful. The way you connected the research directly to her constituents' needs she couldn't resist. Flattery will get you everywhere, Audrey teased, though she accepted the compliment with quiet pride. What are you working on? Quarterly performance reviews, he replied, setting aside the tablet. Sayatita, the clean energy division is outperforming projections, thanks largely to your suggestion about focusing on municipal contracts. Audrey nodded, remembering the lengthy debate they'd had about strategy. Jackson had initially favored pursuing private sector clients, but she had argued that municipal governments offered more stable, long-term relationships. Her approach had proven correct, resulting in substantial growth. We make a good team, she observed. The best. Jackson's tone was light, but his eyes held a depth of feeling that still surprised her at times, though I'm not sure team fully captures what we've become. What would you call it, then? He considered the question seriously. A fusion. Something greater than the sum of its parts, yet still allowing each component to maintain its essential nature. The description resonated. With her experience of their evolving relationship, they had each maintained their distinct personalities and perspectives while creating something more powerful through their union. Very poetic for a ruthless capitalist, she teased. You've been a corrupting influence, he countered with a smile. Making me contemplative and introspective. My board of directors is deeply concerned. Their easy banter was interrupted by a knock at the study door. Mrs. Reynolds, their housekeeper, entered with an envelope on a small silver tray. This just arrived by courier, Mrs. Pierce, she said, presenting the envelope to Audrey. The messenger said it required immediate attention. Audrey thanked her, opening the envelope after Mrs. Reynolds departed. Inside was a formal letter from the White House Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation. Jackson, she said, her voice betraying her surprise. They want me to join the Presidential Commission on Educational Excellence as co-chair. Jackson rose from his desk, coming around to read over her shoulder. The appointment was prestigious, a bipartisan commission established to develop national strategies for educational improvement with particular focus on underserved communities. This is significant, he said, genuine pleasure evident in his voice. Your work at the foundation has clearly made an impression in Washington. Audrey read through the details again, still processing the implications. It would mean dividing my time between Newport, Boston, and D.C., frequent travel, substantial time commitments. You can handle it, Jackson said with complete confidence. The foundation is running smoothly with the team you've built. Your presence is important, but you've created systems that don't require your daily oversight. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of reservation. What about us? Our partnership? This would change our rhythms, our routines. Jackson took the letter, setting it aside before taking her hands in his. Audrey, when I married you, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. A carefully chosen partner who would complement my ambitions and enhance my public image. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. What I've discovered, instead, is that watching you grow into your full potential brings me more satisfaction than any business success ever has. The simple sincerity of his statement moved her deeply. This was so far from the calculating man who had once told her he would teach her to be his woman. "I'm not sure I'm qualified," she admitted, voicing her deepest insecurity. Jackson's laugh was warm, genuinely amused. "Audrey, you've revolutionized one of the largest educational foundations in the country in less than a year. Your mentorship program is being adopted as a model by organizations nationwide. Universities are citing your research in their policy papers." He shook his head. "If anything, the commission isn't worthy of you." His unwavering faith in her abilities bolstered her confidence. From the beginning, even when his methods had been controlling, Jackson had seen capabilities in her that she hadn't recognized in herself. His belief had been a catalyst for her transformation, challenging her to step beyond the limited identity she had accepted. "Will you be all right with me away so much?" she asked, the question revealing a lingering concern about their relationship. Jackson's expression grew serious. "I won't pretend I won't miss you. Our daily exchanges have become essential to me." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture tender. "But I would never ask you to diminish yourself for my comfort. That would betray everything we've built together." In that moment, Audrey fully recognized how far they had both traveled from their wedding night. That pivotal moment when he had looked at her with calculating assessment and declared his intention to teach her to be a woman. The instruction had indeed occurred, but not as either of them had anticipated. She had learned to claim her power, her voice, her rightful place in the world, and he had learned that true partnership required surrender as much as strength, vulnerability, as much as control. "I love you, Jackson," she said simply, the words carrying the weight of their shared journey. "Not because of who you made me, but because of who we've become together." His eyes softened with an emotion that would have been unrecognizable to those who knew him only as the ruthless business titan. "And I love you, more than I ever thought possible." The admission was still new between them, the word love having entered their vocabulary only in recent months. Neither had expected it when they entered their strategic alliance of a marriage. Yet here it was, authentic, hard-won, and all the more powerful for the challenges that had forged it. "I'll accept the commission appointment," Audrey decided, "but we'll find ways to ensure our partnership remains strong despite the distance." Jackson nodded, already thinking practically. "We'll coordinate our schedules as much as possible. I can move some of my business operations to Washington when you're there. We'll make it work." And she knew they would. Their relationship had been built on far shakier ground, control and resistance, manipulation and rebellion, and had transformed into something neither could have envisioned. This new challenge would be navigated with the same determination and mutual respect that had brought them to this point. That evening, as sunset painted the Atlantic in shades of gold and crimson, they stood together on the terrace of their Newport mansion. Jackson's arm encircled Audrey's waist, holding her close against the October chill. "When we stood here on our wedding night," he mused, "I thought I knew exactly what our future would hold. I had it all planned out, every step of your development, every phase of our life together." Audrey leaned into him, smiling at the memory. "And now?" "Now I understand that the most valuable thing about our relationship is its capacity to surprise me." His voice held wonder rather than the control that had once been his default. "You've taught me that real partnership isn't about shaping someone to fit your vision. It's about creating space for both people to evolve and discover each other anew each day." The wisdom of his observation struck Audrey deeply. This, perhaps, was the most profound lesson of their unlikely love story, that true intimacy required the courage to release control, to embrace uncertainty, to allow for continuous revelation. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Marrying someone who turned out so different from what you planned?" Jackson turned her to face him, his expression more open and vulnerable than she could have imagined on their wedding day. "Audrey, the woman you've become is infinitely more fascinating, more compelling, more extraordinary than the woman I thought I was choosing. You haven't just fulfilled my expectations, you've transformed them entirely." His hands framed her face with gentle reverence. "I married you believing I would teach you to be my woman. Instead, you taught me to be a better man." The simple truth of his statement hung in the twilight air between them. Their journey had been unexpected, their transformation mutual. What had begun as a calculated alliance had evolved into something neither could have anticipated, a partnership of equals, each strengthening rather than diminishing the other. "We still have so much to learn," Audrey said softly. "Together," Jackson agreed, drawing her close. As darkness fell over Newport, the lights of passing ships glimmered on the horizon like distant stars. Inside the mansion, that had once felt like a gilded cage, two people who had entered marriage as cautious strangers now stood as true partners, each having discovered in the other not just a complement to their strengths, but a catalyst for their growth. Their story had not ended on their wedding night, with his declaration of intent to teach her to be a woman. That had been merely the beginning, the first step in a journey neither had fully understood. The true transformation had been in their understanding of what partnership meant. Not control, not submission, but a continuous dynamic balance of strength and vulnerability, challenge and support. In the end, they had both been teachers and students, and the lesson they had learned together was perhaps the most important one of all, that love, true love, wasn't about molding someone to fit your expectations. It was about creating space for both people to become their fullest selves, and discovering that in that becoming, they could build something more powerful than either could have created alone. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Audrey and Jackson turned toward their home hand in hand, equal partners in a journey that would continue to surprise, challenge, and transform them both. The night that had once been just a formality, a rite of passage, had become the first chapter in a story neither could have written alone, a story still unfolding, still revealing new possibilities with each passing day. Fim de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope that Audrey and Jackson's journey of transformation has touched your heart. Their story reminds us that true partnerships are built not on control, but on mutual growth and respect. For more emotionally captivating stories that explore the complexities of love and personal evolution, we've prepared a special playlist you can find by clicking on the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring you unique narratives that delve into life's